All right, welcome everybody to Beyond Code, building a personal brand to boost your career. Quite happy that there are so many people today in the audience. One initial remark is we gave this presentation before at QCon San Francisco. That's why you see the wrong branding here.
Yeah, no London.
And previously people said that they wanted to have more personal stories. So we hope that we achieve that. Let's first do a quick about you before we introduce ourselves. I think a lot of people here understand that nowadays you kind of can go above and beyond to show yourself, to showcase your skills whenever you're searching for a new job. Random fun fact is that the talk we gave last time was put on YouTube, and one person left a very angry comment.
Yes, he thought it was a beauty contest. Well, I'm not a beauty, but hey.
Yeah, anyways, I think a lot of people realize that if you want to get a job, it is important to, or it can be important to already showcase yourself before you start job hunting. And a lot of people here at QCon aspire a great career in tech, and they are very open to doing something extra besides your work. And I think it's also important to optimize the efforts to actually gain something back. And very often people ask me, can you share your experiences? So people tend to want to hear experience of what people do in their spare time to like get some more visibility on themselves. Hopefully that's what you're searching for. This is us. Do you want to introduce yourself, Stefian?
Yeah, I'm Stefian.
There you go.
That was quick.
Yeah, I'll skip over myself.
I just want to talk about, my diving experience.
In that case, here you go.
Nothing to do with code. This is me on Bonaire. So Bonaire is a part of, the Dutch kingdom. So I was there doing some diving recently. And you're standing behind the car, so maybe you want to talk about the car as well, or if we just move on.
I think you can introduce yourself.
Okay, then I will.
Professionally.
I'm a principal consultant for a company called Team Rockstars IT. So that's a company that started or was founded 10 years ago, and I joined recently because they said they want to do some consultancy. So, and I figured, why not just try something new in my career. Previously, I was an architect, engineer, so I've done all that stuff. I wanted to try something different, like going to customers, do some pre-sales, and also thought leadership. So that's why I chose to work for this company. I'm also doing stuff, I'm active within InfoQ, like what you were saying. So lead editor for cloud news. And on top of that, I'm also what's called a Microsoft MVP, and I'll talk about that later as well. So after you, Roland.
All right, I'm Roland. I'm working at Wave. It's a company which makes self-driving cars. At InfoQ, I'm an editor, but I will shamefully admit I'm not doing a lot there recently, except for hosting the Generally AI podcast. I've got some stickers here if anyone wants them. That's me. Today in this talk, we're going to share our experience with social media. So basically, what are we getting out of LinkedIn? What tips and tricks are we using to get some reach? We're also going to talk about our blog posts. I think we both have a personal blog. We both have a personal website. One of us is a Microsoft MVP, which is a really cool title.
I don't know.
It's not me.
No, really?
Yeah. Anyways, we're also talking about can you build an online course? If there's other things people have questions about, I think we both tried a lot in our spare time to get some extra reach. Also, we're going to explain you how to contribute to InfoQ. So this, at the end of the day, is a sponsored track.
So hence we.
So it's a sponsored talk by InfoQ actually. So we can tell you how you can contribute to InfoQ articles, InfoQ news, how you can start your own podcast, etc., and maybe even speak at QCon.
What we're doing currently, so that's pretty cool.
All right, let's start with social media. I think the number one social medium, if you want to present yourself professionally, is LinkedIn. I don't know, how many people do you have are following you on LinkedIn?
It's about 4,000, I think.
Yeah, I'm also around 4,000, 4,500. I personally think this is a nice amount, as in I'm not like a prime influencer, but I think it helps me to connect with people in technology which are relevant for me. So there are people in the world of self-driving cars who are following me and thus know me. And the big benefit I get here is that what I hope to achieve is that whenever I go to an interview, people already know me or have seen my face, because that's a massive difference. If people know that you have the knowledge required to do the job, and they know you're often talking about that, then I think people will be more lenient towards you in interviews rather than that they have to assess from scratch whether you're good. For LinkedIn, I sometimes see people get started by posting more on LinkedIn, but there's a couple of things I sometimes see people do wrong, or in my opinion, not like get the most out of it. One is that I see a lot of people who are just plain boring, right? They will only post something like, oh, I've just got this new job, or I've just got this new promotion, or I followed this online course. I'm like, okay, it's nice, great that you post it, but for me, it really seems to help if I relate content to myself as a person. That sounds very vain, but I really notice that whenever I give insights which relate to me, that people pick it up more than that I say this is a new industry insight, which is also kind of frustrating. Sometimes we write really nice articles with really interesting research, and then nobody posts it. What about you, Stefan?
Well, I wanted to ask first, before I share my experience, who uses LinkedIn, posts something like they've changed jobs or, all that stuff on LinkedIn? I do it myself as well. So sometimes I'm saying, hey, I'm working for a new client, or at least, for a new employer. So I've done it once recently. Otherwise, I usually tend to not to. Sometimes you can say, hey, I've given this certification, which also can be a bit boring. Even personal stuff you can share if you want to. You see that too. Not sure if you shouldn't. I done it. So my wife passed away, so I did kind of put that on LinkedIn, but it's more like, because I want to get rid of her account because it doesn't make sense, right? So you could do something like that. You don't have to. Predominantly, I use LinkedIn just to post stuff that I've blogged, or predominantly when I bring out InfoQ news, just to amplify the fact or getting bigger reach of what I've written. So that's something I do quite regularly. Then my company leverages, if I just do a sidetrack, uses LinkedIn a lot as well to promote their events and stuff. So you see that happening too. So.
Yeah, also about relating it to yourself as a person, I would also be mindful that you're not making it too personal. So sometimes I see people post, oh, I'm going on holiday. I'm like, okay, it's not very interesting content, or that kind of makes me lose trust in that person. The one thing which is good is that you can meet a lot of interesting person through LinkedIn. So if you go to a conference, sometimes people come to you and they say, oh, I've already known you from following you on this platform. So it can be a good way to introduce yourself to others if you already know them. Sometimes people reach out, they ask you to drink some coffee at a conference. So it's a great way to meet more people. And again, we will show you a couple of examples in the next slide about how this helped us as a person to connect more. What about Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon, or YouTube, Instagram, TikTok? Do you have any of those?
Yeah, I actually have Twitter, but I kind of tend to shift towards to Bluesky. Whoever uses Bluesky as well? Show of hands. So there are a few. I've got both. I'm tend leaning more towards Bluesky than really using Twitter, because kind of everyone's shifting away because Elon Musk is doing some weird stuff. I'm not using Mastodon that much. You can use YouTube. I don't leverage YouTube that much. I've created some videos and put them online, but I'm not really interested in creating kind of a following. I just had a few talks that I found interesting, and I thought it was a really good ways of just putting it on YouTube. And there's also platforms where you can present, back in the Corona days, right? That also straight away streamed into YouTube. So those are kind of, Instagram is more personal. So sometimes I run, so I ran this morning along the Thames. I just put it on Instagram, that's it. But that's more a personal thing. I don't think you should use it for business kind of purposes. At least my view. And TikTok, yeah, that's something for kids.
We're directly going into this. No, so sometimes you do see people who are, and also developers who are posting or doing YouTube streams or other things like that. Personally, I have the feeling that if you want to be popular on a short message platform like Twitter or Blue Sky, you have to post a lot of interesting insights on a daily basis, which can be very difficult to do, or at least for me, that was not something which I thought was sustainable. And the problem with something like YouTube and Instagram or TikTok is that you very quickly become more an influencer than a developer. And also building up an audience is going to be incredibly hard. So if you have to start from zero, you get very little views. It's very difficult to like refine that art, in my experience. Anyways, so talking about LinkedIn, last time people asked me, do you have some concrete examples of where LinkedIn helped you? One thing which I thought was funny is that I looked at how I got a couple of the jobs in my career. And for one of the jobs, basically someone reached out to me on June 8th, 2020, just after a company I was working at was acquired. And they said, hey, how's this transition going? And I said, oh, only 1 week in, it's looking good. Spoiler alert, 1 week later, it was not that good anymore. So I just said, hey, how are you doing? He said, oh, I'm here's my WhatsApp. And this is something which is really nice, right? Because before I even needed a new job, this person already reached out and asked me how I was doing. Just purely out of interest, because we met at a conference and he knew that I was active on LinkedIn and was posting a lot of insights. Also, fun fact here is that I managed to skip the last interview at this company because the CEO saw that I generated enough interesting content that they were comfortable that I had the right skills to do the job. So they moved to an offer way faster due to like a very small amount or like a minimum amount of public presence. And the other thing is this is, for example, someone who is a recruiter at Wave. She reached out to me a couple of years ago, just asked me, hey, how are you doing? I wasn't interested in a job at the time, but that way she already knew me. And if you go to the next slide, you can also proactively reach out to people who know you. So for example, Adam, he's also recruiting at the company I work at right now. He actually, he and I met each other because he reached out because he liked the blog I was writing. And a couple of years later, when I was actually became interested in working at this company, he already knew me. And I also reached out to him at some point because he was working at Meta and I bought an Oculus Quest. So I was like, hey, you want to play this together? Like, want to try this out together? So in that sense, I think these are some concrete examples where blogging, LinkedIning, writing articles online have really helped me personally in my career.
Yeah, I've kind of, well, I could, of course, show you similar examples, but yeah, it definitely helps you reach out to, let's say, people that are on stage here and talking. So when I do some research and I do some write-ups on some of the presentations here, then I can reach out through LinkedIn. You would wonder, well, why not sending an email? Email is possible, but I see that they tend to react more swiftly on LinkedIn than they do through emails. The other thing is, the downside of LinkedIn one way is, yeah, if you get recognized, then you get a lot of recruiters on your tail that are asking for you to join their company, even though you just switched the company. They don't care, they just keep shooting. So that's one of the downfalls. The other thing is, yeah, you can easily reach out to people, so this example. Then we have something like blog posts. So who blogs? Who still uses and personal or just sharing your knowledge? Yeah. That's how I started too. So I started I used something like blogspot.co. So that's, I think, a predecessor to WordPress, which I started creating a blog post around a message broker called BizTalk Server. So that's back in the day when there was not a cloud yet, or the cloud was upcoming, but I was doing on-prem stuff. And yeah, I just, found some stuff out and I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool to just write about it and add some pictures or diagrams or that kind of stuff, and kind of push that forward. But like what you see here too, it's, there were some numbers, there were some followers, but yeah, getting really dedicated reporters. And initially I had a lot of them because BizTalk was still proficient and available, but when the cloud came up and you have your shift towards the cloud, you did see that the people becoming less and less interested in this particular part of technology. So I started another blog and then I call it Cloud Perspective. So I think, hey, I'm being relevant again. And the numbers went up a bit, but it's a lot of effort putting in, and you're not sure if you get the traffic. Depends. Then also you're now also battling with AI because you can generate quite some interesting content through that too. And then the other thing is, does your company support blogging? Because who blogs for his or her company? See, there's a few people out there that do that as well. So That's another way that I found out is companies also started to do blogs, and then that really got a little bit of a challenge because you also have your own personal blog. So where do you put that content? So I also geared too much to put blog posts more for my company than for myself. Then you got personal websites.
So maybe just go back to the blogging slides. So especially Medium and Substack is extremely easy to set up, but it's very difficult to get a dedicated readership, right? Because if you have to start from scratch, you have to get some attention from somewhere, and I guess in practice that means posting to the Y Combinator news site or posting on Reddit. And I always personally struggled creating a new blog from scratch, because if you don't have any traction yet, getting the initial readers is hard. And also especially dedicated readers. So it is one thing to have one blog post explode once, but getting people back to your website over time is very difficult. And especially with ChatGPT, I think it's, on the one hand, people are reading less blog posts because ChatGPT would just answer any question you have. And also it allows people to create these low-effort blog posts. So I would definitely say don't be like one of those people who just pumps out article after article, but try to find a new niche in the market where you are the true experts. Because if you have a completely new new insight which no AI has picked up yet, that's when people start finding you, and that's when people start seeing you as a person to keep in mind. And yeah, as you said, if your company supports blogging, you can actually take work you already do on a daily basis, put it out on the web, and in my experience, sometimes they even pay you for it. That can be nice. And in my experience, this can be very helpful in any future interviews or whenever you're talking with other people to prove that you have some experience in an area. So I sometimes take some of the blog posts I've written for a company and show them to people to say, hey, look, this is the insight you want, and this is what you could basically do it on a company time. Yeah, personal websites, they are harder to set up. But I do think they showcase even more a dedication to putting yourself out there. In my case, I've got this website called Pinch of Intelligence, which I set up 10 years ago. I'm not using it a lot lately, to be honest. And it's even harder to get dedicated readers. So I don't know, I don't think anyone here has this as their homepage. You shouldn't. But what is nice is that you can get complete freedom of what you post about. So if you are having a blog or if you are having some kind of personal brand online, it's always nice if you consistently post about the same thing over and over again, such that people know you as the cloud person. And overall, it's just a good personal portfolio. So whenever I'm interviewing people and I see they have a personal website, I always take a look because it's just interesting to see what they are spending their spare time on. Downside is that if your website or if a blog post becomes popular on any of the other websites, like Y Combinator News or Reddit, your website will go down. So that's a shame.
Right. So I like to talk a bit about being recognized within a certain community. So Microsoft in this case brings out a recognition which is called Microsoft Value Professional, which is awarded to people that provide value. So it's not about being the smartest or so. That could be in other, let's say, communities. So back in the day, you had an Oracle ace and someone who's really into Oracle and knew a lot about it. That was being basically awarded with the ACE award from fellow forum leaders or users, basically. So Microsoft has this program called MVP, and I think they started this about 30 years ago through forums, but then they just expanded it through the people that stand out during presentations or blogs, et cetera, et cetera. So who else is an MVP in the room? See, I knew there was one. But you have similar things like AWS. AWS has AWS Heroes. Any AWS Heroes in the room? Well, we have one in InfoQ, which is Renato, who has been awarded through AWS for being a hero. So there's others. There's things like a Java champion. See? I knew it. You have those too. But even at a company called Databricks, they have these programs called Databricks MVP. So there's multiple companies, or I would say platforms like Microsoft, or companies, I would say, like Microsoft, that award you with this award. And in case of an MVP, it's a yearly renewal. So depending on, they weigh you in if you're still valuable for them. I've been valuable for 15 years apparently, so still going strong. And then you have the thing that one of the things as an MVP, you be on stage. So before I was an MVP, I was not on stage because I hated to be, you know, in the center of attention. Back when I was a young kid, you had to do a presentation at school. I hated that, you know, I wanted to hide and wanted to be under here because I didn't want to do it. Once I became an MVP, I thought maybe I should overcome that fear and just start going on stage and then present. So what I'm doing today. 15 years ago, I'm not so sure if I would stand this quiet and talking to you and addressing you a bit more like this, right? So that really, yeah, this is something that I've done. And if you're an engineer and you want to get out of your comfort zone, or maybe you want to address people live like this instead of a blog, but really face people and want to share it, then yeah, being on stage is a thing. So I started doing this 15 years ago, and now I'm enjoying it. Back in the day, I hated it. Like at stage fright, I couldn't sleep a day before and all that stuff. So yeah, it really helped me in expressing the way I am today. So I'm a pretty introvert person, then all of a sudden you're, you know, facing people and, you know, maybe talking even about some personal stuff. So yeah, that's different. I'm not sure what your experience is, but you're on stage too.
Yeah, so in terms of being on stage, I think the big value you can get out of being on the stage, and especially if you're talking about actual professional work, right, instead of personal brands, I think you can really establish yourself as an expert. Talking at places like QCon helps a lot because then you have an audience of experts in the field of software engineering. Getting gigs like this, or like getting gigs at QCon, often requires that people already know you as someone who has this experience, has this knowledge, and can talk about their work in an interesting way. So for me, it helped me a lot to also like get my knowledge out and also think about what do I actually want to say, what do I actually want to do. So I can definitely recommend doing that. But also even getting there can require a certain amount of personal brand building before you get invited regularly to speak at conferences. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, once you get recognized and they do ask you, but then when 2010 was more like user groups, they got invited, then became something like content, call for papers, or they do curation like they do at InfoQ. So yeah, then there's an option that you either submit a real good talk, you get elected, or they find you because you stand out in your field. So my predominant field is enterprise integration. So I'm more like a back-end guy, while you're more an artificial machine learning, cool stuff guy.
I'll take cool stuff guy as new title. Okay, so the other thing which people sometimes ask me is, should I build an online course? The big benefits of publishing a course is that if you do it in the early days of a framework, you can be the go-to person for that framework. So in my case, I once published a course on TensorFlow when TensorFlow was very new. What's really nice is if you can get this published, because the publisher can support you. In my case, they did all the video editing. I really hate video editing. They did a lot of preparation. They do all the selling. They do all the marketing. The downside is that publishers, or like most publishers, will probably kind of do a spray and pray thing where they hire 20 people to make a course about this new framework. And then you just hope that your course is working the best, and that's when they start promoting you more. I do sometimes get questions in interviews whenever I'm applying for a new job on, oh, how much do you know about this thing? Like where, like from 1 to 5, where 5 is someone who wrote a course about this. And then you can just say, okay, I actually wrote a course about this. So it's, again, another way to establish yourself as an expert in an interview. You can get a bit of money from this, but often they just do you they prepay you something and your course never makes anything anymore. It's a very large time investment. That's a big downside. So it takes a lot of time to create something which is good, and then you just hope that it benefits you in the long run. Yeah. Yeah,
I have no experience I created a course, but it was more like in person than something online. So. But yeah, I think if you create a course or if you have blog posts or stuff, it becomes tangible and you can refer to it definitely in an interview. Okay, let's switch to InfoQ.
InfoQ. Yeah, you want to explain what InfoQ is?
Yes, InfoQ, a daughter company from QCon that together with, from Q Media, if I'm correct. So you got QCon on one side, you got InfoQ on the other side. So the sister website of QCon is InfoQ. That's what we work for. So it's predominantly created, that is a platform that you have podcasts, you have news articles, you have news items. So we both are more into news items writing, while you're more predominantly in podcasts. So that's another type of content that's being published on this this platform. And like what you've heard Daniel say this morning, right, is done by practitioners focusing on a part of the hype cycles, predominantly early adopters or very innovative stuff. So looking ahead in time instead of writing a lot about what's already established or what's proven. Although sometimes, we do write about stuff that is proven. So for instance, stuff around serverless is still pretty popular. There was a great talk yesterday about Octopus and the energy market, where they also leverage serverless. So it's not always about the latest thing or the latest and greatest in new technology. We, of course, focus heavily on it, but sometimes we do write about other stuff. Yeah, that's kind of what we do at InfoQ. So it's written predominantly by people that are also engineers or architects that are really the doers. So it's not like, although I am a consultant, but I still do a lot. But yeah, they called me a principal consultant, but I'm somewhere in between. So I still do stuff that is relevant for the audience of InfoQ. And there's tons of stuff we produce weekly, monthly. There's people like us, editors, that write stuff, but there's also people that contribute in the ways of articles. So sometimes I get an article that I review, and then that's also being published. So,
yeah. If we go to the next slide, I think we have some benefits of, or like this is what we do at InfoQ. So personally, I've been an editor since 2017. Lately, I'm not writing a lot of articles anymore, but I did start a new podcast recently about AI. Stefan, what about you? Oh yeah, but the other thing I do is participate in this AI machine learning trends report. So that's something which we do every year at InfoQ, where we get together with a couple of experts and talk about what are the latest and greatest trends. That is content which gets watched a lot. So, and that's also something which in terms of personal branding can really help you establish yourself.
Yes, and like Roland, although we didn't know each other that well back in 2017, but we started around the same time. I do mostly news items, so I progressed from being a junior editor all the way up to senior level in a couple of years, and I'm also now basically managing the cloud queue. So that's what I do, and also review articles that come in, predominantly the cloud-related articles, because there's all sets of articles, because basically InfoQ has all these buckets or queues, you could say. So you have the AI ML, which you're working in, your cloud, that's me. You got architecture, you got culture, and you got DevOps. So there's different queues and also different set of content that we're creating. So I'm doing news items in cloud, and I review articles of cloud. But it doesn't mean that there's only cloud articles. There's also other types of articles that are also being reviewed, but then through editors that are more versed in that particular space. And I'm also, like Roland, there's trend reports. So there's a great one on architecture. That's one of the main ones, and that also gets a lot of attention. And then there's some I would say, trend reports around cloud and DevOps, AI machine learning, and so forth. So that's what we do, but there's multiple people, multiple editors, a lot of people also in the background also that are organizing this event. There's a lot of people behind the screens as well. So we also have people behind the screen helping us out in getting the content out.
Yeah, so there's quite a couple of direct benefits of writing for InfoQ compared to the other things we talked about before. So one of the downsides I always see when you're starting your own personal blog, or whenever you're starting out being more and more active on LinkedIn, or starting a new YouTube channel, whatever, is just the amount of audience. So I already said, normally you're kind of hoping that people on Reddit, on Y Combinator news, they pick up your news. The big benefit of InfoQ is the amount of audience. Daniel, how many people? 700,000 views a month. So if you publish something on InfoQ.com, the content is immediately on the front page, right? So you immediately have this 700,000 viewers, which are potentially clicking your article. If you put something on Reddit, it always ends up in the new category, which means that basically only the couple of really dedicated readers are assessing whether your article is worth seeing. So that's a big benefit. Yeah, the other thing which I personally really like is the feedback on what and how you write. So whenever I write something for my personal blog, or whenever I do something like post something on LinkedIn, I personally have one friend who always critiques me and says, "Oh, this article could be better written this way or that way," but that's very rare. So becoming better in like crafting your own personal brand, becoming a better technical writer, is something which doesn't come for free or doesn't come automatically, and that's something where I think working with or for QCon and writing an article or writing a news item is very valuable, because InfoQ actually, so first of all, Daniel will read your article and give feedback. And we also have, for example, a professor in English literature who can critique your article. So that's very daunting, but that actually makes you better, right? And that's also one of the few ways one of the few moments in my, I don't want to say career in like blog posting, but it's one of the few moments in writing content that I got feedback on how can you make this better? How can you improve this? How can you make this more interesting for other people? Your experience?
Well, the other benefit is that you explore a lot of technology. So I'm predominantly work in Azure because I'm a Microsoft MVP. However, I also get to look into what technology AWS offers and Google. So if I talk to customers, I can also relate to the fact that other cloud platforms have similar type of services. So that makes me, in some way, maybe a better consultant or engineer, that I also know a bit more about the other platforms. The other thing that helped me personally, because I started to learn more about other platforms when I started doing integration work where I had to connect Azure to Google, for instance. If I didn't know what Google was at all, or at least the cloud platform, that would have been a very daunting task. But basically, because I was doing all this work for InfoQ, I started to learn more about other clouds too, but also a little bit about AI, ML, and there's other stuff that's really interesting when you're working for InfoQ, or at least, well, you're doing stuff for InfoQ, the article writing and such. And the other thing which I really like is attending conferences. Although you do see me smile here, I was running in San Francisco, but hey, going to San Francisco and attend a conference on that side is also interesting. So you get to learn people from Silicon Valley, which you usually don't because they not tend to come here, and vice versa. So it's interesting in ways of networking. Yeah, that's another benefit. So that's the thumbs up.
Yeah. So yeah, now I guess we're like getting a bit more into the advertising space. But the big benefit of attending conferences is you can attend QCon. I think for free as an editor. Not sure what the rules are, but we are here. Yeah, we got invited. Also, if you go to other conferences and you say, "Oh, I'm writing for InfoQ," often they will give you a free ticket. So this doesn't go for all conferences. So I think that the AWS conference doesn't do this. But a lot of the conferences or the events, I asked, hey, can I come to your conference, not pay entry, but I will write an article about it? Like, actually, often they just said, yes, you're free to come. So yeah, that's good. Also, InfoQ pays you something for content. I don't know how much it is. I personally always use this to invest in podcasting, buying books to learn more about AI, machine learning. But it can be a benefit which you don't have if you set up your own personal website. I'm bleeding money on that, bleeding money on server costs. But for InfoQ, you actually get something back. Other benefits are like, let's take a look at the next slides. Yeah, so
see, this is a sponsored thing.
We'll do this quickly to not seem too sponsored, but InfoQ is especially looking for .NET, web dev, and cloud editors. There's an email for that. Do you want to explain something about how InfoQ actually works?
Well, this is also said in the morning, right? So they adopt this Chasm book, what they kind of leaning towards to and taking the principles of it. Like I said already before, they're really focusing on the innovators and early adopter space because that's where we kind of write content around. This is also where a lot of cloud platforms and other companies are pushing content and saying, hey, this is a new service. An interesting thing, for instance, quantum computing. So you see that all these big cloud providers now say, hey, well, you know, I've got this chip. So Microsoft got Marijuana 1, Google has Willow, and I think AWS, they all have these funny names called Ocelot. So that's one of the things. And this is, of course, something that's now in in its infancy, but it's progressing, right? Just an example. And it's an example of what we're focusing on too. So it's basically those first two areas. Not to say that we don't, cover anything beyond the chasm, which is early or late majority, but the real focus is where we are going to be in a couple of years' time. So this is also advocated in the morning before the keynote. So this is one of the things that we do. So that's kind of the content we focus on, and then it's geared towards a certain target audience, right? So that's engineers, architects, those people that are really working with the technology. Could also be maybe interesting for consultants even to when they talk to customers, because they're following what's on this website. Hey, this is where things are going. But predominantly we're using or looking at the engineers, developers, DevOps engineers, architects, and so forth. So also the number here is almost 66%, over 60, so 2/3 are identify themselves as architects. So.
Yeah, and also just coming back to the point of how can you use this for your own personal brand? How can you use this for your own personality, your own online presence? I personally sometimes feel a bit bad because I'm writing something about something which is completely new and nobody's interested in it. And this can be things like, I think I gave a talk at a QCon where 5 people showed up about how great ChatGPT and large language models were. And I always nobody's interested in this. But you see that a couple of years later, suddenly this becomes the predominant technology, and you can be known for one of the people who was already talking about this in the early days. So even if you think, oh, this is new technology, I'm not sure if people are even interested in it, and you get low reader numbers, if you persist, you will become the person who is known as one of the predominant people in this industry and in this area, Yeah. So how does InfoQ work? So one of the things you can do is just approach us. There's more people who are wearing an InfoQ shirt. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in blogging for them, as I said, I think it helps a lot. You can also add us on LinkedIn and ask us questions. There's a couple of things which I can recommend if you want to start doing this. One is writing a long-form article. So I made a tiny URL for this. If you're writing a long-form article, InfoQ already connects you with an editor who will give feedback on both your writing and your content and the way you should style your content. So I know a lot of people who didn't have a lot of time to become a permanent editor, but they wrote 1 or 2 articles, have gotten a lot of feedback on their writing, and whenever I'm looking at someone's article, sometimes I say, oh, this is specifically very interesting, write more about this, write less about that. So it really helps you to develop this kind of writing muscle. You can also become an InfoQ editor immediately. There's an InfoQ.com, write for InfoQ. Write for InfoQ. Also, please tell us how you liked our presentation, because we never know why people show up here and what you want to learn, what you get out of it. So we're very eager to basically hear if you wanted to hear us talk more about how to write a good blog post or how to write a good LinkedIn message, whatever. We're very happy with any kind of feedback. We should have asked this to anyone who walked out of the room. Last but not least, I created a special form about how to join the InfoQ editors. And look, there's hearts in the QR code. But so there's basically now a form where you can leave your email, write your full name, your LinkedIn profile. Hopefully you already have one. And you have to say what kind of person you are and what queue you would like to join. And there's an inspiring quote by Thomas Betts, who since this week has 50 podcasts and 100 articles reviewed. Your article can be reviewed by Thomas Betts. So all jokes aside, I think it's very easy to sign up and try this out. And I think that's it for us. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, I very much appreciate you coming here. So, because this is, usually I'm doing technical talks and stuff, and now I'm doing something also out of my comfort zone, because this is talking about, some personal stuff and how I build my brand and becoming a little bit more visible than back in the old days when I don't want to be visible at all. Still, sometimes it does feel awkward to get, the recognition, because you're standing here and then, you're talking about stuff that is a different than talking about integration, Azure, logic apps, messaging, what I've heard this morning, right? I feel totally comfortable about that, but this is something that's different. But anyways, thank you for coming. I think last time we had stroopwafels in 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 San Francisco, and now he thought about giving stickers. So
Yeah, I've got generally AI stickers. Anyways, yeah, thank you very much. We got 10 more minutes for questions. So if there's anything from the audience, that's welcome. Yes.
Could you elaborate about?
Sir, please wait for the mic.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting, but could you think about the trade-off between your public profile and companies that forbids to have a public profile?
Wait, say it again. So it's a trade-off between my my personal.
I mean, me as an engineer, I have either ability to make a profile to be publicly available, to be famous and everything, or I can go to some company that pays quite a lot but forbids to have a public profile.
Yeah. Okay. So you mean that your personal profile might clash with the profile of your company?
No, more about like secrecy and like you are not allowed to make some public talks and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's always difficult, right? Because your company says that you are absolutely the best, and you are sitting there thinking, "Oh man, our tech stack is a joke." That's you can't publish that, of course. So that's indeed difficult. So I tend to walk around this a bit by writing about things our company has nothing to do with, but which are still relevant to engineering. So this can be like if you're working at a dating app, maybe you can write about how you can do scalability for something, but then using a technology which you are not using. So that's something I sometimes do. Again, try to work with the company to see how you can integrate into their messaging. So this can happen automatically if you're working on a high visibility project. So that's also something to try to steer your career towards, is can you volunteer to be on something which you know will be published and which you know will be online later. My relationship with the people at companies I worked at who are responsible for PR is always a bit bit so-so. Sometimes they really appreciate that I do something, and then sometimes they scream at my face, being like, "Why did you publish this? Like, you were not allowed to." Especially if you have to, get a good relationship with those people is basically what I want to say, because often if you have a good relationship, they can make your slides better for a presentation. So you can get a massive boost by getting way better slides, way better tips on how to give a presentation. And also they will then, if you have a good personal relationship with them, they will forgive you that you didn't hand in the slides 2 weeks ahead of your presentation. So that's the things I would do. And that's the nice thing about the personal blog post, that you can always blog about a thing you do in your spare time. But that takes, of course, your spare time. More difficult.
Thank you. Yeah, super interesting talk. Thank you. Somewhat relevant for this week, I guess. I guess if you were starting from zero again, how would you take advantage of the opportunities that a conference presents to sort of advance your career?
Like if you're starting absolutely from zero.
If you don't have if you were suddenly had 0 LinkedIn followers, for example, and you wanted to build your network, how would you? I'm sure you're sort of approached at conferences now, so you're not doing the approaching maybe. But if it was the opposite, how would you take advantage of what a conference allows you to do?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what kind of person you are. I noticed that there are some people, especially politicians, who tend to just chat for 5 minutes with everyone and then hand out their business cards. I know I'm standing here with stickers, but
stickers help.
I personally notice. So this is why I'm also quite fine. Like I know I'm not the biggest LinkedIn influencer with my 4,000 followers, right? But I know that all of the people I'm connected with, I have a bit of a personal relationship with. So I would personally rather chat for an hour with people and really get to know them, really get to understand what their tech stack is about, really get to understand what kind of synergies you can have, rather than that you try to like spray and pray and get to be known by everyone. Especially like if you're further on in your career, you start noticing that everyone is always working at all the same companies. So being known by the small amount of people which really matter and who are going to interview you at some point, or who are going to refer you to that cool job at one of the big fan companies or something, I think that is more important than trying to reach as many people as possible.
quality over quantity.
Thanks for the talk. If I am not mistaken, you both have like a full-time job, and the InfoQ, the stuff you do on LinkedIn, your blog post, you do on your free time. How much time would you say it takes you, like every week or something? And do you have tips in how to manage that properly?
Well, I have 5 kids now, because I met someone. She has 2 kids, I have 3. And I also now have 2 + 1 free dog, so yeah, it's a lot of time. Then I have not a full-time job though. I started working 36 hours because I didn't start to notice that I couldn't do it all, besides my job. So you have to think about evenings. I don't know what your personal situation is, but let's say you do have kids or not. Well, if you have kids, then yeah, you have to find a time when they're sleeping, when they're young. When they're getting older, they have their own ways. And then the things that you do in life as well, besides like sports or to friends. So yeah, you have to find some kind of balance. I usually do it early in the mornings, or maybe late afternoon. I'm just trying to find a spot to do this, because you do have control over your time, right? To start creating content or prep for a presentation. In general, yeah, you do find time, but it requires some type of dedication. And you have to find the thin line between, where you want to prioritize your time to. And don't forget that the path that I've taken personally took about 15, 20 years. So when I started my career, I'd done nothing, like only work, work, work. And at some point, I started doing a little bit of blogging, and then I just progressed. But it's over those years that I spent time. So yeah, you have to get, it's like, it's hard to answer, because it's like going like this with your personal time and find the right time. And sometimes the ideas come when when I after jet lag, I get awake and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And even then you can take the time. Although I'm not sure if that's good for you, or you're getting tired and more tired. So yeah.
Yeah, for me it also comes and goes a bit. And for InfoQ itself, I'm quite happy that they are very flexible with that. I shouldn't say that, but because they don't want you to be flexible and write every week. But for me, it kind of comes and goes, and sometimes I have ideas, and I say, hey, can I start this new podcast series? And they allow me to. What I also try to do is, at some point in my career, I tried to build, but this was already 5-6 years ago, is I tried to build some consistency, where I thought I want to have one interesting LinkedIn post every week. So let me think about what I can post this week, which would make it interesting, and can I already kind of build up some content for the future. So this can be about, I'm going to attend this conference, and this is what I'm talking about. I'm attending this conference, this is what I learned. I'm doing this thing in my spare time, take a look at the first results. So if you see it as a thing you try to do on a weekly or frequent cadence, then not only do a lot of those platforms reward that, but you also get into the mindset of, oh, this is interesting, maybe I can put this on my personal content calendar. As I said, I'm not doing this anymore, so I'm just posting things as they come and go, but it can be good to get into the habit initially when you're starting to build up the start of your personal brand.
I think we're almost out of time. I think we've got like 1 minute left. Yeah, so if there's one question, quickly, otherwise we'll, again, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much.